This is the Sergio Rodriguez Show.
Welcome, everybody, to the Sergio Rodriguez Show, a show unlike any other. Today, a little bit of a rivalry with the person I'm bringing in because everybody knows that on this broadcast, we are a predominantly New York Yankee telecast. But today, from the Houston Astros, the general manager, Mr. Dana Brown. Dana, how are you?
Hey, Sergio. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
Now, listen, you grew up in New Jersey. What team did you root for growing up?
I actually grew up a Met fan. You know, I was big. Mookie Wilson was my favorite player back in the day because I was an outfielder. Looking on switch hitting, speed guy, all of that. So I was a big Mookie Wilson fan. Grew up a Met fan.
Okay. So I won't tell you that you left the Yankees to go GM somewhere else, because that's it. You know, it's always an interesting thing for me how people grow up and then all of a sudden, you know, they have to wear a different shirt across their chest and it changes the way that they think, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. My son's a Yankee fan, and when I worked for Toronto, you know, he got a picture with Jeter. I got him down on the field. He was all excited about that. You know, I grew up a Met fan. You know, I was drafted by the Phillies, though. So, you know, that's kind of weird. You know, grew up a Met fan, drafted by the Phillies, and, you know, been with a few organizations since. But it's always weird how things turn out.
So you mentioned that you were drafted by the Phillies. Obviously, you played for – we have a mutual friend, Mike Coco, who coached you at Seton Hall, and obviously I coach his kid now. But you went to Seton Hall, and you played with a couple of former big leaguers who made their impact. Speak to me about your time at Seton Hall before you got into pro ball.
Yeah, Seton Hall was a great baseball school. You know, I decided to go there, you know, because, you know, the baseball was great. You know, the university wasn't as big. You didn't have to worry about classroom sizes and all that other stuff. And so being at Seton Hall, you know, you felt like you were going to go there, get a good education, and also you were going to be on a good baseball team that get guys scouted. And I was very fortunate that, you know, I played with guys like Craig Biggio, Mo Vaughn, John Valentin, you know, Kevin Morton was also on that 87 team. And, you know, that's like, you know, that's four big leaguers right there. And, you know, people don't realize, like, we have Martise Robinson on the team, you know, who hit 100 points higher than Craig Biggio, which is kind of crazy. And Craig Biggio is a Hall of Famer. It just tells you how tough this game is. But at the end of the day, it was a great stop for me education-wise, and it was a great stop for me baseball-wise. And so, you know, got my degree there, so I was excited about that and, you know, still in baseball.
You go to the Phillies, you get drafted, and then you end up coaching in their organization. When you got there as a coach, you were still young, so I'm sure physically you probably felt you can play. How was the transition from player to coach from one year to the next?
Yeah, Sergio, it's tough. No doubt about it. You know, you still feel like you could play. You know, I played for 3 years after being drafted, and then, you know, got as high as AA. And then in spring training one year, they released me and offered me a coaching job in the same sentence. So, of course, I took it because I wanted to stay in the game, and little did I know that it was going to lead to something like this in my career. So it worked out, you know, even though, you know, at the time I was struggling with it. I still wanted to play, but the good Lord had something different for me. I didn't realize what I was doing and going through back then. But, you know, to now be here in a GM chair, it's pretty fulfilling.
And the only minority GM, which to me is special, right? As a minority myself, because I always think about the fact that being Dominican and watching all of the players that have gone through Major League Baseball since we were kids, the revolving door of superstar Dominican players, and the fact that we don't have one Dominican manager or haven't really had that run, right? We had Tony Pena every now, you know, but we have these guys that'll go in for a year or two, Manny Acta. but we haven't had an impact in that game. So to see someone of color in that position, gives you hope that if you just keep on grinding, it's gonna, it'll happen,
Yeah, so one of the good things that I saw, like I think I'm the seventh general manager in baseball, African American. But you had guys that were ahead of me. People don't know about Lucas, who was in Atlanta, Bill Lucas. But you know guys like Kenny Williams, Hill, who was GM in Miami.
Bob Watson.
So yeah, Bob Watson. I remember he was the GM of the Yankees. I still remember the Graham Lloyd trade. He took a little static and ended up being a good trade. So you had some guys that went before you that kind of gave you a vision that, look, this is attainable. You can do it. And I worked my way up through the ranks, of course, and, just the years in scouting, the years of evaluating players and getting this opportunity. You don't take it lightly. There's not many African Americans doing it. And so you want to pave the way and you want to, lay the groundwork as to, hey, we have some qualified African Americans that deserve a shot, and, thank God for Jim Crane, who, I sat with an owner, Jim Crane, and he ended up hiring me. We had a good meeting, and, he kind of followed my career, my track record, my past, and decided, hey, give me an opportunity. And then you had guys like Rob Manfred, who said, hey, stay the course. I know you had a couple other GM interviews. You had an interview with Seattle. You had an interview with the Mets. But, stay the course, and good things are going to happen. And sure enough, I got the opportunity in 2023, after being in the game for like 33 years. So it's a good thing, and I'm excited about it.
That game took you through the Expos, the Nationals, Toronto, Atlanta, where everyone really started to recognize the job that you had been doing, right? Because I think that sometimes we do our jobs, but it doesn't get the same recognition as when something always happens that pops. And with all that young talent that came up with Atlanta, and everybody realized that you, as a president of scouting, was behind that, and then the team obviously wins, and you got Strider and all these guys, you pop there, and now you get to Houston. And
right.
Houston's got a philosophy that has worked for them and has been obviously second to none over the last 10, 15 years, right? When you get there,
right.
and you speak to Mr. Crane and you get hired, is there a mandate of, hey, you're the boss, you're the GM, but we want X, Y, and Z. We want to keep this analytics stuff. We want to keep this. Is there a philosophy that is bestowed upon you that you have to now follow, or you have to work around? How has that been?
No, so Sergio, one of the things people don't understand is, we've always applied the analytics to baseball, right? It's just that we're getting more in detail with certain aspects of analytics. Because we have a saying in scouting that, before you make a pick, weigh all the evidence. So you weigh the evidence of the scouting report, you weigh the evidence of the analytics, and then the most important part, you weigh the evidence of the makeup. The makeup is what drives you, and what kind of winning player you're going to be. So those are some aspects that you can't get away from. You have to take analytics, you have to take the scouting, you have to take the makeup. It's a combination of all of those things. And to think that you could, do the job without applying any one of those, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. So, but those are the three main things we really evaluate and value here in Houston, and we did the same thing also in Atlanta. So, and then Houston has, some high tech analytic stuff that, that we apply, and a lot of it I don't completely understand, but we have people here who understand it and talk to me about how that applies to, the scouting side. What does this mean? This guy's throwing 93 to 97, but he keeps getting hit. Well, it doesn't have many traits for the fastball. So you learn a lot of different things, but you have to weigh all the evidence when you're making baseball decisions.
Is it hard for someone who grew up, because we grew up basically in the same generation, is it hard to look at the value that they put on players now? I mean, I see guys that are batting 240 with a million strikeouts, and people try to tell me that they're these great players. But I guess we grew up in a different generation where if you batted 240, you were a light hitting middle infielder, right? So mentally, just because of what was ingrained in you, has it been hard to adapt numerically, I should say, statistically?
Not necessarily, because you weigh the overall value and production of the player. You know, back when we were playing, there wasn't much shifting, and guys knew how to hit the ball the other way, and you couldn't shift as much. You know, so there's different things that change. But at the end of the day, you know, the analytics, you know, plays a part of it. So you realize this guy may have hit 240, but maybe he hit 30 home runs. And he drove in a lot of runs. So he was productive in another way, not so much in terms of batting average, you know, but he was productive. And so, you know, you take the productivity where you can get it. And, you know, and you make sure that you're doing the other things right with the club as far as you better be pitching. You know, you better have good pitching. You better pitch the baseball, so you need good defense. And, of course, the timely hitting is what seals the deal on a good club. If you have pitching and you can catch the baseball and you get some timely hits, you're going to win a lot of baseball games.
You know, it's funny because one of the things that I hear from sports writers and everybody is that wins in baseball for a pitcher don't matter. And that drives me crazy because to me, there is an art to winning a game. And to me, there is an art to hanging around and figuring out how to maximize the 100 pitches you might have in your arm on that day. When you...
Yeah, I think it goes...
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, well, my point is...
No, I was going to say...
Do you feel the same?
It goes both ways. Well, so I think it goes both ways. I think there's an art to a guy who knows how to pitch deep in the game. Maybe he doesn't have the greatest stuff, but he can pitch deep into a game, and he really knows how to operate. And he's going to have a lot of wins because he's pitching deep in the game, and he hands that over to the bullpen. There is value in that. You just can't overweigh it. For example, you may have a guy that's got a high earned run average, but every time he pitches, the team scores a lot of runs, you know, and he's got a 6 earned run average, right? Just because he won the game, I'm not going to overweigh that, you know. So I think there's stuff that you have to. It's not as easy as saying wins doesn't matter, and it's not as easy as saying, well, this guy's got a lot of wins, so he must be really good.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think you have to weigh, again, you have to weigh all the evidence. I do feel like there's an art to guys who can pitch in that 3-2 game, 4-3 game, and pitch deep and operate and get outs. I think there's value to that, you know. But I'm not going to overweigh wins for a guy who's got like a high earned run average, but he wins games simply because the team scores a lot of runs when he's pitching. So I just think, you know, sometimes we get into this, you know, right, wrong, black, white. You know, it's not as cut and dry as that. You know, baseball is a complex game, and I think there's a lot to it. I mean, there's certain hitters that you want coming up, you know, when you have men in scoring position, you know, and there's certain guys you don't want to see, you know. But it's a complex game, and, you know, that's what makes it beautiful. It's like the game of life. You just never know, you know, how it's going to turn out. But you got to set yourself up to be in a good position.
Put your scouting hat on for me right now. One of the things that I feel has been totally overvalued over the last 20 years in baseball is the defensive aspect of the catching position. Because guys don't run like they did back in the day. So the idea of neutralizing a running game really has been more shifted to the pitcher just basically doing somewhat of a decent job holding the runner on from getting a huge lead. All these guys are throwing the ball 97 to 100. So realistically, you're sitting there really, your hardest job might be physically just catching the ball if a guy misses a spot. When you look at the catching position over the last 20 years, do you guys still value the defensive aspect of the catching position, or have you guys shifted to more of, hey, if this guy can get 20 home runs from that position, we'll live with whatever happens behind the plate? Example, Gary Sanchez, somebody like that who, for all intents and purposes, should be a guy who I think should be able to have a job, and he's been struggling to get one, and I don't understand why, because in this game, he's really what I would want as a catcher: hit first, defense second.
Yeah, well, I think the deal is this, right? So I don't think you should, underweigh, the value of a defensive catcher. You have to wait. You have to give it some value, because there's some catchers who just can run the show back there. For the most important part, right, of catching is calling a game, right? You got to know how to call a game. That's very important. You got to know what pitch is on, what pitch is working, what pitch is not working. That's the valuable tool, knowing how to call a game. Also, framing. Framing is a valuable part of what catchers do. They know how to frame. They know how to, get a strike here or get a strike there. That's a very big part of the game when you can frame. And then blocking the ball. If you're constantly running back to the screen to get the ball and no one wants to throw to you, that's not good either. Now, if you got a guy that's got home runs and he can catch, and maybe he's not the greatest caller or the greatest framer or the greatest blocker, well, you can live with him. But you do have to have those skills to be behind the plate. Maybe you don't have to be plus or above average. Maybe you're just average at those other things, but you could really hit, and that creates some value as well. But what you can't afford is a guy who doesn't know how to call a game. He doesn't know how to frame. He doesn't know how to block, but he can hit 25 or 30 home runs. Maybe we'll find another spot for that guy. It's called DH.
Yeah.
But you want your guys behind the plate to be able to call the game. You want your guys, to follow the pitch plan, calling the game. You want your guy to be able to frame a little bit, and you want him to be able to block. There's, as you said, there's guys that throw hard. There's guys that have nasty sliders. All right, you're gonna have a guy on third base. If he can't block the good stuff, the pitcher's not gonna feel as good throwing it. So there's some value to the defensive side of catching. I don't think we should just kind of just pass it off. But as I said, you can't overweigh one thing over the other. You need a balance to get through this game, and you need a little bit of this and a little bit of that to get some wins.
A couple of things here before we wrap it up. Talk to me about this year's Houston team. You guys are 9 games over. Texas has gotten off to a pretty good start, and they got off to that start really without DeGrom doing any pitching, which I guess has become the norm. But where could you guys get better this year? What is the one thing that you're looking at and you're saying to yourself, yeah, if we can figure this out by the All-Star break, we're going to take off?
Yeah. Early on, we were striking out a lot, which I didn't. I knew it was not consistent with who we are. So I know once we would cut the strikeouts down, we were going to start driving the ball a little bit more and driving in runs a little more. So that was one area, and then we were starting to clean that up. And we just got to get some production from some of our guys, and once they get hot, I think we're going to take off, because if you look at it, we're like at the top in pitching. We're like second or third in defense. So we can pitch, we can catch the baseball. Once the bats, come through, yeah, I think we'll be really good. I think that's when you'll see, the 8 to 10 game winning streak, the 10 to 12 game winning streak, double figures over 500, whether it's 12, 14, or 18. That's when you'll see everything click and you're running on all cylinders. So, that's the best part of the game. When you get on all cylinders and you're pitching, you're catching the ball, and you're hitting, good things are going to happen.
As you begin to prepare for now the last 100 games of the season. It's incredible. We're already a third of the way through. But as you begin to prepare and you look at what moves you're going to make, the American League West has 4 teams with winning records. The American League East has all 5 teams with winning records. Yet the National League only has 6 total teams with winning records in their league. As you're beginning to prepare, do you look at this and you say, okay, these guys are going to be sellers. These guys are going to be buyers. How do we match up here and there? You go through that process?
Yeah, I think it's a little early right now to tell. You still have a little bit of time for that. I mean, I was in Atlanta in 2021, and, we were like 500, and, we called Harris up. We put Strider in a rotation. The team took off. It was like the end of May, like maybe May 30th, May 29th. So it's still got a month to go before you can, say who's going to be closer to 500 or who's going to be under 500. The teams that are not playing well, and they don't have a good team, that's different. Maybe you could say they're going to finish under 500. But there's some good clubs out there right now, as we were in Atlanta that year, 21. We were hovering right around 500, one game under 500, and then we got hot. So I think it's a little early, but, I think there's more teams that are going to end up over 500. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of when you get hot, stay healthy, and get clicking on all cylinders. And I think that's when things will change.
Everybody knows.
All right.
Everybody knows about the top players in your organization, and this will be it for me. The Jordan Alvarez and everybody. Give me 2 young players to keep an eye on moving forward in the organization.
Yeah, well, Gilbert from the last year's draft, he's really good. Exciting. He's got power. He can run. He can play defense. He can throw. He's a very, very exciting player. It's really, really exciting to watch. And, hopefully he'll continue to progress, and, he'll be one of the pillars, down the road at some point, because he's an exciting player and he plays with like a little bit of a flair, and that's just something to get excited about. We also have, Melton. Melton's a really good player. Power, really good defensive guy, plays center field. So, those are 2 really young outfielders who, we project that could be pretty good players and pretty good pieces down the road. And not only can they play defense, but they can hit, and they can hit for power. So, those are really, really exciting things. We have Lee in AAA, catchers hitting, swinging a bat well. So there's some exciting guys on the farm. We just have to see how they progress and keep moving.
Dana, thank you for taking 20 minutes to speak to us today. I know you're busy. And listen, from the bottom of my heart, good luck the rest of the way during the season. And hopefully we'll touch base in the world when you guys make the World Series.
All right, Sergio. Good talking to you, my friend.
Take care, Dana. That was Dana Brown, general manager of the Houston Astros, and you've been listening to the Sergio Rodriguez Show, a show unlike any other.
This is the Sergio Rodriguez Show.